Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going way back in time to explore the birth of a movement,
Okay.
the United Farm Workers of America.
Sounds good.
You've given us a fantastic podcast episode to dig into, and it's packed with intriguing details about all the key figures.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Get ready for some surprising connections and aha moments.
Yeah, what's fascinating to me is how this story intertwines with the broader social and political shifts that were happening in the U.S. at the time.
Right?
We're going to see how events like the Zoot Suit riots and the Bracero Program really created the conditions for a movement like this to emerge.
Okay, so let's unpack this, starting with a pivotal figure.
Sure.
Dolores Huerta, you might know her name.
Yeah,
But this podcast paints such a vivid picture of her early activism,
it really does.
working directly with farm laborers in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine this. A young woman approaching exhausted workers in the scorching heat, offering help and advocating for their rights.
Really brave.
What do you think motivated her to take on such a challenge?
Well, I think it speaks to her deep empathy and her recognition of the injustice these workers face.
Yeah.
The podcast highlights this one story about a Bracero worker who collapsed in the fields from exhaustion.
Oh, gosh.
Dolores intervened, but the worker was terrified of losing his job if his supervisor saw them talking.
Wow.
It's a stark illustration of the power dynamics at play.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the Bracero Program and how it contributed to this atmosphere of fear and exploitation?
Sure. The Bracero Program began during World War II.
Okay.
It allowed Mexican laborers to come to the U.S. to work mainly in agriculture.
Right.
And while it was intended to address labor shortages, it often resulted in really exploitative conditions.
Oh, wow.
Workers were tied to specific employers, making it really difficult to speak up against any mistreatment for fear of being sent back to Mexico.
Oh, it's awful.
You know, this program, along with the racial tensions of the time that were exemplified by the Zoot Suit riots, really set the stage for a movement that would demand better treatment and fair wages for farm workers.
Sounds like a pressure cooker waiting to explode.
Yeah, you could say that.
The podcast then introduces us to Fred Ross,
Yes.
a community organizer with a unique approach to mobilizing people.
Mm-hmm.
And he played a really crucial role in training future leaders like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta.
Absolutely.
His method was all about house meetings,
Mm-hmm.
voter registration drives,
Yeah.
and building trust within communities.
Right.
It's interesting how he focused on empowering people at the grassroots level.
Yeah, absolutely. Ross understood that lasting change comes from the bottom up.
Right.
This grassroots approach,
Yeah.
it involves organizing and empowering people within a community to advocate for themselves and their community.
So it wasn't just about protests and rallies.
Exactly. Ross saw the power of community organizing as a way to create lasting change.
Yeah.
And he also emphasized voter registration as a way for marginalized communities to actually gain political power and influence policy decisions that directly affected them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And one of Ross's early successes was with the Community Service Organization, or CSO,
Yes.
and they managed to help elect Edward Royal to the LA City Council,
It's a great name.
the first Mexican-American to hold that position since 1881.
Wow.
That's a huge step forward in terms of representation.
It's a testament to the effectiveness of Ross's methods and also the growing political awareness within the Mexican-American community at the time.
Okay, but there's a twist in the story, right?
Yeah, there is.
Cesar Chavez, who had been working with the CSO, started to feel disillusioned.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
He felt that the CSO was shifting its focus away from farm worker issues,
Okay.
which, were really central to his vision. He wanted a dedicated organization solely focused on improving the lives of farm workers.
The podcast describes this really dramatic scene at the 1962 CSO convention,
It is dramatic.
where Chavez, along with Dolores Huerta and Gilbert Padilla, decide to leave.
Right.
It was a bold move.
It was.
What led to this pivotal moment in the hotel lobby?
Well, Chavez believed that to really truly fight for farm workers' rights,
Right.
they needed an organization that
Yeah.
wouldn't compromise on their core mission.
So it was a matter of principle and a commitment to a specific vision.
Precisely. Chavez's decision to leave the CSO highlights the tension that can exist within social movements as they grow and evolve.
Right.
Sometimes staying true to a specific mission requires creating a new path.
Okay.
And that's exactly what Chavez, Huerta, and Padilla did when they formed the National Farm Workers Association, or NFWA.
It seems like every movement needs that defining moment.
Yeah,
A line in the sand.
sure.
And the NFWA was born out of that conviction. They even had a powerful symbol, the black Aztec eagle designed by Chavez's brother.
Oh, yeah, I love that symbol.
Did that eagle represent something specific?
Yes. The eagle was a powerful symbol of strength, resilience, and a connection to their Mexican heritage.
Right.
It served as a reminder of their history, their struggle, and their determination to fight for a better future.
Okay.
It was a visual representation of the unity and purpose that really drove the NFWA.
Symbols can be so powerful, especially in the early stages of a movement.
Absolutely.
So we have this new organization, the NFWA, ready to tackle the immense challenges facing farm workers.
Okay.
But they weren't the only ones organizing, were they?
You're right. The podcast also introduces us to Larry Itliong,
Okay.
a Filipino labor leader who'd been organizing farm workers, predominantly Filipinos,
Right.
through the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, or AWOC.
Itliong's personal story is incredible.
It is.
He faced so much discrimination, but achieved early success with AWOC.
He did.
He organized a grape strike in Coachella Valley in 1965,
Yeah,
which was a significant victory.
it was.
It's interesting how both the NFWA and AWOC were working towards similar goals but were operating independently. Was there any tension between the two groups?
That's a great question. There were indeed tensions reflecting the complexities of the farm labor landscape at the time.
Right.
Competition for jobs and cultural differences sometimes created friction between Filipino and Mexican-American farm workers.
So even within a movement fighting for a common cause, there were internal divisions to overcome.
That's a common thread in many social movements.
Yeah.
Building solidarity across different groups with shared goals but distinct identities and experiences
Right.
can be challenging.
Yeah.
Overcoming those divisions is often crucial to achieving lasting change.
And that brings us to a pivotal moment in this story.
Okay.
The Delano Grape Strike of 1965.
It's a turning point.
And it was during this strike that AWOC, led by Itliong, and the NFWA, led by Chavez,
Right.
decided to join forces.
It's amazing.
What led to this historic alliance, and why was it so significant?
Well, the Delano Grape Strike marked a turning point in farm labor history. Both AWOC and the NFWA were facing challenges in their respective strikes against grape growers in the Delano area.
Right.
And they realized that their combined strength would give them a much stronger position. This decision to unite demonstrated the power of solidarity and cross-cultural alliances in challenging powerful adversaries.
It must have been an incredible moment. Two organizations,
It was.
each with their own history and challenges,
Yeah.
coming together to fight for a common goal.
This alliance laid the groundwork for the UFW,
Right.
the United Farm Workers,
Okay.
and significantly strengthened the farm labor movement.
It sounds like the Delano Grape Strike was about much more than just grapes.
It really was.
It was about the fight for dignity, respect, and a voice for farm workers.
You hit the nail on the head. The Delano Grape Strike became a symbol of a much larger movement for social justice and civil rights,
Wow.
capturing the nation's attention.
And its success would have a profound impact on labor rights and social movements in the years to come.
Absolutely.
The question is,
Yeah.
how did they manage to pull it off?
That's a great question.
We'll dive into that right after this quick break.
Yeah, the Delano Grape Strike was more than just a labor dispute. It really became a symbol for this much larger movement for social justice and civil rights.
It's remarkable how these farm workers, often overlooked and marginalized, managed to build a movement that captured the attention of the entire nation.
Their strategic use of nonviolent tactics played a crucial role.
Okay.
Chavez had studied the civil rights movement in the South, and drew inspiration from leaders like Martin Luther King Jr.
Okay.
They organized marches, boycotts, and even hunger strikes,
Wow.
all while maintaining this commitment to peaceful resistance.
This approach must have resonated with people on a much deeper level.
I think so.
It wasn't just about demands. It was about appealing to people's conscience.
Exactly. Nonviolent resistance, when done effectively, can be incredibly powerful.
Right.
It exposes the injustice of the system while highlighting the moral high ground of those seeking change.
The podcast mentions the role of the media in amplifying their message. How did newspapers and television stations react to this strike?
The media's response was a turning point. Newspapers and television stations started covering the strike,
Okay.
bringing the farm worker struggle into the living rooms of people all across the country.
That must have been a game changer. Suddenly, the whole nation was watching.
It was. The media coverage really helped to shift public opinion in favor of the workers.
Right.
People who had never thought about the conditions faced by farm workers were now seeing the reality of their situation.
And it wasn't just about raising awareness, right? The media coverage also put pressure on the growers to negotiate.
Absolutely. The growers were now facing scrutiny from the public and even from their own customers. They could no longer ignore the demands of the workers.
The boycott also played a crucial role, didn't it? The farm workers called on consumers to stop buying grapes from the Delano growers.
The boycott was a brilliant tactic.
Okay.
It directly impacted the growers' profits and forced them to take the workers seriously.
It's fascinating how they used economic pressure to achieve their goals.
Yeah.
Was the boycott successful?
It was incredibly effective. The boycott spread across the country and even internationally,
Wow.
with people refusing to buy grapes in solidarity with the Delano workers.
Wow, that's impressive. It shows the power of collective action and consumer choice.
It does. The boycott demonstrated that ordinary people could have a real impact on powerful corporations
Right.
by making conscious choices about what they buy.
So the combination of nonviolent resistance, media attention, and the boycott ultimately led to the success of the Delano grape strike.
That's right. It was a testament to their strategic planning, their courage, and their ability to mobilize public support.
What were some of the key victories they achieved through the strike?
The Delano grape strike resulted in the first union contracts for farm workers in U.S. history.
Wow.
These contracts secured better wages, improved working conditions, and established grievance procedures to address worker concerns.
That's a remarkable accomplishment. It must have felt like a watershed moment for the farm labor movement.
The Delano grape strike showed that it was possible to challenge the power of the agricultural industry and win significant victories for farm workers.
But as we know, the fight for social justice is never truly over. What challenges did the United Farm Workers face in the years following the Delano grape strike?
The Delano grape strike was a major victory, but it was just the beginning. Maintaining those gains and continuing to fight for better conditions would require ongoing effort and vigilance.
What were some of the obstacles they encountered?
Well, the UFW faced opposition from powerful agricultural interests
Okay.
who sought to undermine their efforts. And they also had to contend with internal divisions and shifting political landscapes.
It sounds like a constant battle to protect their hard-won gains.
It was.
How do they navigate these challenges?
The UFW continued to organize, educate, and mobilize farm workers.
Okay.
They also formed alliances with other social justice movements to broaden their base of support.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
We've seen how a movement can emerge from the ground up, fueled by the passion and commitment of individuals who refuse to be silenced.
It's a powerful story.
And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in fighting for justice.
Absolutely.
It's inspiring to see how ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things when they come together to fight for a common cause.
It really is. The story of the United Farm Workers is a testament to the power of collective action and the enduring struggle for social justice.
We've covered so much ground already.
We have.
From Dolores Huerta's early activism to the historic alliance formed during the Delano grape strike.
It's amazing.
Now let's delve deeper into the legacy of the United Farm Workers and the challenges they faced in the years that followed. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of this incredible story. The Delano grape strike was a major turning point, but what happened next? The podcast hints at some challenges within the UFW, particularly with Cesar Chavez's leadership.
That's right. As the UFW gained national prominence, Chavez faced immense pressure to maintain control and unity within the organization. His leadership style evolved, and he became more focused on centralizing power. The podcast mentions that this shift caused some friction with some of his closest allies. Dolores Huerta, for example, advocated for a more democratic approach and a greater emphasis on women's leadership within the movement.
That's a really important point. It seems like internal tensions and power dynamics are something that many successful movements have to grapple with as they grow. Was this shift in Chavez's leadership style related to the challenges the UFW faced from external forces like the growers?
Absolutely. The agricultural industry was actively working to undermine the UFW's power. Growers used various tactics, including legal challenges, intimidation, and even violence to try to break the union. Chavez may have felt that a more centralized approach was necessary to maintain the UFW's strength and unity in the face of such opposition.
So it was a reaction to a hostile environment, but didn't this approach also create internal conflicts?
Yes, it did. Some members felt that Chavez's focus on control came at the expense of democratic processes and open dialogue within the union. This tension led to disagreements about strategy and tactics, with some advocating for a return to the grassroots organizing that had been so successful in the early days.
It's a reminder that even the most inspiring leaders are human with their own strengths and weaknesses. Their decisions can have unintended consequences even when driven by good intentions.
Exactly. It's crucial to remember that social movements are complex and dynamic. They involve diverse perspectives, competing priorities, and internal disagreements. Navigating these complexities is essential for long-term success, and that's something the UFW struggled with in the years following Delano.
Despite these challenges, the UFW still achieved some pretty significant victories, right?
Absolutely. In the 1970s, they won several major contracts with prominent growers, securing better wages, healthcare benefits, and improved working conditions for thousands of farm workers. These contracts were a testament to their persistence and their ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
It's inspiring to see how they continued to fight for their vision, even in the face of adversity. But did these victories come at a cost?
Yes, there were costs. The internal tensions and the ongoing battles with the agricultural industry took a toll on the UFW's membership and its political influence. By the 1980s, the union had lost some of its momentum, and the gains they had made faced constant challenges.
So the story of the UFW is a complex one, a mix of incredible triumphs, internal struggles, and ongoing challenges. What can we learn from their experience?
The UFW's story teaches us about the power of collective action, the complexities of leadership, and the importance of adapting to changing circumstances. It highlights the challenges of maintaining unity within a movement and the need to balance strategic decision-making with democratic principles.
And it reminds us that the fight for social justice is a marathon, not a sprint. The Delano grave strike was a pivotal moment, but it was just one chapter in a much longer story.
That's a great way to put it. As you continue to explore the history of the UFW and other social movements, consider the long-term impacts of their actions, both the victories and the setbacks. Reflect on the challenges they faced, the choices they made, and the lessons we can draw from their experiences to inform our own understanding of social change.
It's been an incredible journey tracing the birth and evolution of this powerful movement. We've seen how individual courage, strategic organizing, and a commitment to a shared vision can create lasting change.
And it reminds us that we all have a role to play in building a more just and equitable world. Whether it's supporting workers' rights, advocating for social justice, or simply raising our voices against injustice, we can all contribute to creating a better future.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the UFW. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of their history, their struggles, and their enduring legacy.